Okay, welcome everybody to Info to Go. This event is brought to you by the Idaho Commission for Libraries with funding support through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Sometimes you'll see that shortened to ICFL, in Idaho Commission for Libraries, and IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We are recording today's session, and we will be providing an archive of the recording on the Idaho Commission for Libraries website. Also, those of you that registered for the session, we will also make available that link to that via an email. My name is Tammy Hollyhouse, and I'm your host today. I work here at the Idaho Commission for Libraries in the area of continuing education. But I would like to welcome our presenter today. Our presenter is Nick Madsen. He works at the Community Library Network in Hayden, Idaho, and he has lots of experience with breakout programs in the library. So I will turn things over to Nick.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tammy. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Tammy mentioned, we are going to be sending out a recording of this. We're going to have it archived. We're also going to be creating a document that'll have all of the links to the websites and other resources that we're talking about today. So feel free to take notes, but know that we will have a document that will have all of those links clickable for you as well to make things as easy as possible. So right now, what I wanted to do is start off with a poll to see if any of you have done Breakout EDU or if you have done a breakout room in general. So I believe that right now you should be able to see a poll. Thank you for replying to that. I believe that all of you should be able to see the results as they come in, which is also kind of fun. We'll spend a couple more minutes, well, a couple more moments ultimately. Not a very long poll, which is nice. Looks like we have a pretty decent split between those that have done a Breakout EDU or a breakout room and those that have not at this point. Thank you so much for participating with us there. Have a little bit of an idea where you all are at now. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. All right, so let's go ahead and begin our talk, and then we'll learn a little bit more about Breakout EDU. So as Tammy mentioned, my name is Nick Madsen. I am the Emerging Technology Librarian for the Community Library Network. That is a new position for me. For the last 7 to 8 years, I've been working in youth services, and that's where most of my experience with Breakout EDU came from. We've done it for special events in our libraries, and we've also done it as an outreach to many of the after-school programs that we go to in our community. And it's a platform that we have just have a really good time with. I want to also give you a little bit of information on the Community Library Network. We are a county library system in northern Idaho. We have 7 physical libraries, and we also have a bookmobile. Our residents, we have about 111,000 residents in our service area, and we also have our service area spread out over 1,100 miles. So we have a lot of opportunities in our area and a lot of different participants and members that we're able to reach. But enough about us. We want to be talking about Breakout EDU today. So Breakout EDU is a kit that you are able to purchase from Breakout EDU, and these are a couple of the things that come inside of the kit. For those that have done a breakout room before, which was about half of you, the basic idea is you walk into a locked room. There's typically some kind of a scenario that you're locked in an old warehouse and zombies are coming to get you. You need to break out of here before they get you. Or you are a bank robber and you are in the room with the Queen's jewels and you're trying to solve the clues in order to get the jewels in the center there. That's how a breakout room works. and then you're trying to break out of the room itself, but the room itself is locked. Most of the time, just with like a magnetic lock, just in case you actually did need to get out of the room. But some educators love the idea of problem solving, of critical thinking, but the idea of locking a bunch of students in a room did not sit so well with them. So instead of doing a breakout room, these educators decided to create Breakout EDU, which was use those same ideas of problem solving and critical thinking, but instead of trying to break out of a room, you're trying to break into a box instead. These are a couple of the things that come with the Breakout EDU kit. You can see that there is several different locks. There is a red filter that will reveal some hidden clues. There's also a UV light pen as well as a UV light. That way you can see the hidden ink that you put on some of the clues. And you'll also notice that USB there. With some of the scenarios, you'll be able to go onto a computer and find information that way as well. The primary reason that we really appreciated the Breakout EDU system is it comes with a whole bunch of pre-created content. So the box itself is just your vehicle, and these are all of the different ways that you can use the curriculum of Breakout EDU, basically. So for one of the scenarios, your lock might be set to 1, 2, 3. Another lock is a color lock. Another lock is a direction lock that you're trying to solve. And all of those different curriculum pieces allow you to be teaching the students different things through the box itself. Wanted to mention to you that Breakout EDU, the box itself is around $150. You can try to cobble together the different locks and such if that's a little bit of a steep price tag. Another thing, though, that is included with the Breakout EDU box is access to the Breakout EDU platform. And on your screen there, the subject packs and all of those different games, those are available once you have that Breakout EDU platform. That with the $150 for the box, the platform comes included for that first year. After that, it would be $60 for each subsequent year that you would want access to the platform. We find for our purposes that there's also some free games that you can access without having to pay for the platform. And if you're just using Breakout EDU a couple of times, the platform games would probably be enough for you. Also, if $150 seems a little bit steep for your library, then we're also going to have some free resources at the end of our webinar that do some of the similar things to Breakout EDU, but they're free options. But for our purposes, we find that Breakout EDU works well because you have all the tools that you need, but you have some pre-made games that you can use. Right now, instead of just talking a little bit more about Breakout EDU, trying to get you an idea of what it's like, we would like you right now to actually experience what it is like. Recently, Breakout EDU, in addition to doing the physical games and the physical locks, they also have started doing digital games. So I was able to find a sample digital game, and right now I would like you to follow the link on the next slide in order to actually try one of their digital games. You're going to try to unlock 3 locks, and you're going to have 10 minutes in which to do it. So this is the link right here. Tammy and I tried to make it clickable. If it's not, you can just type that into the URL bar on your browser. And because it's on Breakout EDU, not on a gaming platform, it should hopefully open even if you are in a school library environment. Oh, Tammy, thank you so much for putting that in the chat down below as well. So right now, what we'd love for you to do is click on that link, try out that Breakout EDU digital game. It's going to take about 10 minutes. When you come back, please go down into the chat and let us know what your experience was like. If you're not able to actually do the game, we are going to have a couple of videos playing right here on the webinar. But right now, if you can, please go ahead, try to actually click that link and try out that game for the next 10 minutes. And we'll be back in about 10 minutes. We'll continue our conversation. Thanks.
Hello everyone, welcome to Breakout EDU. My name is James and I wanted to take a few moments to explain to you what Breakout EDU is and how it can be used to create rigorous, engaging learning environments. Breakout EDU was inspired by the escape room movement. There are places where you and your friends can be placed in a locked room and you have to solve a series of mysteries and puzzles in order to get out. But with Breakout EDU, rather than a locked room, we have a locked box. What's special about Breakout EDU is that all the games have been designed using similar physical items. That way, if you have one physical item like a lock box or a directional lock or a number lock, that same lock can be used for any of the games. So think of it like a Nintendo. Once you have the box, you can play any of the games that are designed for it. Each game has a facilitator, and as a facilitator you'll need to look at the game, figure out the materials needed for that game, set it up, and run it for your learners. Make sure you're aware of the game so that you can provide them with hints. Be sure to check out the video on the hint cards if you're unfamiliar on the role of the hints. Finally, Breakout EDU has a community of thousands of educators around the world who are designing games, sharing their ideas, sharing their struggles, sharing their successes, and we'd love for you to join us there. That should be the first place you go to if you have an awesome idea or something went well in your classroom or you have a question that we can't answer. The community is definitely the place to be. We couldn't be more excited to see students out of their seats, moving around the classroom, enjoying problem solving, and returning that fun into the learning experience. We're just getting started with Breakout EDU, and we can't wait to see where it goes. Breakout EDU, it's time for something different. Here are some helpful tips for facilitating Breakout EDU games. On each game page, you'll find a button that says Launch Facilitation Tool. If you click that, it'll open up a tool that you can use to facilitate your Breakout EDU game. There's a button on the right that says Introductory Presentation. This is a presentation you can use if you're playing with Breakout EDU players for the first time. This is a great resource for teaching others about Breakout EDU. If you're playing with seasoned or experienced players, you don't need to use this presentation. Over here, you can customize your game timer, adding music. Over here, you can customize the number of hints. The default number of hints for a Breakout EDU game is 2. Here, you can click Start Timer. Once you start the timer, this will project full screen and time will start coming off the clock. If your players need a hint, you can click the hint card button here, which will pause the timer, allowing you time to provide a hint to the players. Once you believe they're ready to go, you can press resume. Let's talk about hint cards. Hint cards are 2 cards with the word hint written on one side and blank on the other. These are given to your players at the beginning of the game. At any point in a game, a player or team can decide to use a hint card. When they want to use a hint card, they will let you know so that you can pause the timer. They will hand you one of their hint cards. You, as a facilitator of the game, someone who knows the game, will then provide them with a hint. It is 100% up to you to decide what you want to share with them. Hints can be as simple as referring them back to a piece of content or maybe a piece of information that they may have overlooked, or providing a framework for how they might want to think about a problem. Whenever possible, try to preserve the critical thinking aspect of whatever puzzle so as to not to spoil the puzzle itself.
Sixth graders at Schuylerville Middle School have been using their math skills to try and crack a code and find their way inside these mystery cases. It's all part of Technology Integration Specialist Lori Guillon's Breakout EDU lesson. Students in Mrs. Poutre and Mr. Meehan's classes were divided into groups, all with the same goal: break out of the box before time runs out. To do that, they had to solve clues by completing a series of math problems, from multiplication and division to order of operations and fractions. Each correct answer helped them get one step closer to unlocking the locks. Students used their critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork skills, and they seem to be having fun too.
It was just like fun. You're really trying to get yourself to open the box. You really want to see what's inside of that case. So it was really a fun experience for me. I hope I could ever do it again.
Yeah, we got two more. Up, right, up, right. Yo! I know. How they like scissors? Watch there be another box. Watch there be another box. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this one. Just to make everybody else mad. Alright, give me the
For those that are going to be watching this archive later, we're just waiting for some of our participants to come back from actually trying out a digital Breakout EDU game that would have opened up in another web browser. So we're just going to spend 1 or 2 more minutes waiting for our participants to finish up in that digital game, and then we'll actually continue our webinar. So it looks like a couple of our participants were in that designated amount of time. They were only able to figure out one of the locks, but that is totally fine. You were working through that process. Amanda, thank you for mentioning that the ABC lock spelled grit. Randy mentioned while working independently, then watching the video. Oh, sorry, my chat just moved down. I apologize. While working independently and watching the video of group collaboration, you can see the advantages and potential challenges of working in a group. And Randy, that's definitely something that we've noticed. There are several students that want to just work by themselves, but most of the time we encourage them to work with a group as well. Because so much of the time when one student gets stuck, another student might be able to give them that little bit of a spur to move on and successfully complete that puzzle. Naomi, that was an excellent point as well. Kept looking for the hint that the video mentioned, but it wasn't on my screen. And for that digital game, that particular one did not have a hint. And so I actually had to do that Breakout EDU game twice to actually solve the puzzles. I was a little bit saddened by the fact that that digital game did not have the answers or did not have a hint to get you to the right answers. It was pretty much your time ended, it's over, you're done. That's one reason that the physical games work really well, because then you actually have a facilitator, a mentor that's in the room that can help the students see, oh, this might have been a different way of doing this, or hey, let's actually try to figure this out right now, instead of it just being a, sorry, tough luck, you're not able to actually get it done. Another thing that Clay asked was, I didn't get the letters, how did you get grit? I actually had, so I figured that right now we're actually speaking about the Breakout EDU digital game. And Clay, what I found is I was able to Google hieroglyphic letters, and one of the hieroglyphic alphabets would spell out grit. The other hieroglyphic alphabet that I found did not spell grit, it spelled gert or something like that. So that was another piece that I was a little bit frustrated that there were not hint cards in the digital game. But I hope that all of you were able to kind of get an idea for that Breakout EDU process. You can kind of see how you approach a clue, you're able to get some of them, but then some of the clues, while they seem easy, when you try to put in that answer, you actually realize there might be a missing piece that you haven't looked at before. See that a couple of our participants are still typing. One thing that we appreciate about Breakout EDU is, just like you found, there is that grit that is needed. There's also that perseverance that's needed. And just like Randy mentioned, there are benefits to working alone, but there's also benefits to working as a group. And most of the time when you have multiple students in the room, maybe an entire class or an entire group, we typically do this in a group environment. Oh, and Clay and Naomi, I apologize. Most of the time when you do a Breakout EDU room, you actually do have all of the clues printed out for the students. But there are some scenarios that do require you to have a computer and actually look up some of the information. That digital game that we just tried did require you to actually Google additional information, which was something that I did not explicitly say, and that would have been a facilitation error on my part. So that is something that I will do the next time I'm telling people to do that digital game. But I wanted once again to kind of give you an idea of how Breakout EDU worked and how that room actually works. You have the clues, you're working through that process using your critical thinking. So right now, what I wanted to do is, first of all, give you 3 scenarios that we have used from the Breakout EDU website to kind of give you a place to start looking for resources, and also wanted to give you a couple of the things that we've noticed as best practices while we've been using the Breakout EDU game. if you were not able to solve all of those digital clues. I suggest doing it again because, once again, the first time that I did it, totally ran out of time, was frustrated because I wasn't able to figure out all of the pieces there. So I did it again, and the second time I was able to find a couple more pieces of information by Googling, but also by looking at the clues themselves. Then I was able to actually get all 3 locks undone the second time that I did it. So right now, we're going to go ahead and mention 3 Breakout EDU scenarios that our library really appreciates. The first one is called Attack of the Locks, and as you can guess, it is a Star Wars themed game. We really appreciate this one because there are there's about 6 locks that you're trying to figure out in this game. The first 2 of them are kind of like low-hanging fruit. They're rather easy for students and participants to figure out. So then the students are emboldened to keep going even though some of the later clues are a little bit more difficult. Because they had early success, they're able to push through, use that perseverance to get at those more difficult locks because they know it's possible. And that's something we really appreciate about this scenario. And once again, we're going to have clickable links. We're going to be sending a document in the archive and also to your emails that will have all of these links clickable for you. There is also Back to Reality, which is a Minecraft-themed game. And this is one we also appreciate because the clues are very specific. Why there's only one answer that you can come to. So you're able to still do your problem solving, your critical thinking, but once you figure out that puzzle, you're like, oh, that has to be the answer. And then you're right, and you're able to get that thing off of the box. This is a third one that I wanted to mention to you, the totally radical 80s time travel adventure. And it is just as awesome as it sounds. You have Carmen Sandiego, you have floppy disks, you have Tetris, you have Mario, so many fantastic things. One word of caution with this particular scenario is that the clues themselves can sometimes be a little bit ambiguous with this one. For instance, there is Tetris pieces that build into a stair, and you have to divide some things in order to find the correct answer. But the puzzle pieces can fit together in multiple ways. So then the clue and the answer are not as apparent. So with this one right here, just that word of caution, it still works fantastically, but a couple of the clues aren't as specific as I would like them to be. Which brings us to the point that with all of those different scenarios that Breakout EDU offers, some of them are going to be really high quality, they work really well with a group of students, and some of them are not going to work as well, which lends us to the idea that going through the scenario before you put it in front of students, making sure that you as a facilitator and mentor kind of know some of those sticking points, that way you can help your participants through them. But it also gives you an idea of, is this going to work with my group? Is this not going to work with my group? So those are 3 that you can start with. The beautiful thing is all 3 of those are free on the Breakout EDU website. So even if you do not purchase the platform, you do not purchase the box, you would be able to go onto their website, download all of the clues ready to go, and it would also tell you how to set up the locks, how to set up the room, which is a nice feature as well. Right now, I wanted to continue our conversation and give you some best practices that we have found as we've used those. Katie, thank you for that question. Katie asks, do you know recommended ages for those 3? With Attack of the Locks, we've used it with elementary school all the way up through high school. The high schoolers did figure it out a little bit more quickly than the elementary school students did, but all of them enjoyed it because of that Star Wars theme. The Minecraft does lean a little bit, the Attack of the Locks and Minecraft do lean a little bit more toward elementary school or younger middle school students, while the Radical 80s Adventure leans more toward the middle schoolers and high schoolers. That was our experience anyways. And thank you for that question, Katie. If anyone else has any questions as we're going, feel free to throw those in the chat and we'll definitely be chatting about them. So right now, I wanted to give you some of our best practices. The first thing to decide is, are you going to be doing this as an entire classroom, or are you going to be doing it in individual groups? Most of the time on the Breakout EDU website, they say, oh, this scenario works for an entire group of students. What we found is if you put one breakout box, one set of clues in a room with 25 students, there were typically about 5 to 6 students that were very hyper engaged. They were the ones that were working through the problems, they were working collaboratively, but then everyone else was a little bit more peripheral. Everyone else was just kind of watching from the outside. So after observing that once or twice, we started printing off multiple versions of the clues and breaking students into groups of 4 or 5 instead. That way you have smaller groups, you have more participation from all of those students. That also begs the question, do you have to have multiple Breakout EDU boxes if you're having multiple groups? The answer is, if you have the funding, it would be awesome to have 5 Breakout EDU boxes, 5 different sets of locks, and 5 different sets of clues. If you don't have the money to do that, you can get away with just doing it with one box. The way that we've done that is using the box more as a visual aid. So you introduce Breakout EDU, you say, this is what you're trying to do, you're trying to break into this box. But then, instead of giving them access to the box, you give them each a basically a check sheet of these, a checklist, I should say. These are all the locks that you're going to try to break off. So you need to find 3 digits, 4 digits, a couple of shapes, and also some directions. And then in those individual groups, the students are able to write down the combination that they think is on the box. And then as a mentor, as the facilitator, you go over to their checklist and you go, yes, your 3-digit one is totally accurate. Oh, you're still working on your direction. Go ahead and keep working on that. So that way, even though you're not spending more money on Breakout EDU, you are able to have smaller groups that are actually working with those sets of locks and still working on collaboration, on problem solving, and critical thinking. So that's something that we have done. But once again, if you have the option of having more boxes, that would be the easiest way to do it. But there is a way to do it with just the one box. And that's typically what we do with our students from once we started doing this. Another thing that you might want to do is if you have multiple groups that are going to be using, you're going into the library and you have a group at 1 o'clock and then you have another group at 3 o'clock, you could print enough clues for everyone there, or you could print off the clues and give every team a piece of scratch paper. That way they're not drawing on the clues themselves. That way you can reuse those clues again and again and again, instead of printing off the 10 to 15 pieces of paper that are required for each one of the scenarios. So just something to keep in mind if you want to save on those print costs. One more thing that a couple more things I wanted to mention is, do you give prizes or do you not give prizes for the Breakout EDU box? Most of the time when we do it, we'll have some small pieces of candy or something inside of the box. One time when we were doing our Star Wars scenario, we actually had printed off some Rebel medallions. And so we were able to give those to all the students when they broke into the box. When I went onto the Breakout EDU website, they actually specifically said, don't give prizes for doing this. The experience of breaking into the box should be worth it. It should be that intrinsic value. And while I agree with that, and with certain groups, that is going to be beneficial, I think that there also is something to be said for incentivizing that process and incentivizing that hard work of getting to that goal. So that's something that you can consider and talk with your colleagues as well. One more thing that I wanted to mention, I heard, I can't quite remember which training I was in, but I heard that learning only happens outside of your comfort zone. But learning stops happening as soon as you are too frustrated to continue. So there is that balancing act between getting students and participants out of their comfort zone. So they're a little bit uncomfortable, but not so uncomfortable that they shut down, that they lock up, that they're not able to continue. As the mentor and as the facilitator, one of your roles is to be going around keeping those teams moving forward, giving them those little bit of encouragement when they need it. That was the one problem earlier with that digital game. There was only the 10 minutes, but there also wasn't those hint cards that were there to help you actually get unstuck if you did get stuck. So as a mentor in a physical room, you're actually able to facilitate that process a little bit better. The Breakout EDU game does come with hint cards, and you could be very specific about, as a facilitator, I'm not going to be helping you. If you want some input, you're going to have to use one of your hint cards, and you only get 2 hint cards. Most of the time, I'm not that explicit. I'm not that specific on the hint cards. Most of the time, I'm kind of going around, and if I feel that one group is really struggling, I'll go over and try to say, what are you working on? Can you walk me through your process? What information are you pulling from? One thing to keep in mind is that as a mentor, you're not trying to give them the answers. You're trying to get them to a place where they can solve the problems themselves. And so you're trying to just get them unstuck. So pushing them in the right direction, walking them through the process, seeing where there might be some holes in what they're thinking about, or maybe just introducing, hey, have you tried to look at this clue over here? What do you think that might help with? So asking those questions and helping them move forward themselves. So those are just some best practices that we have done while we've been doing Breakout EDU. Does anyone have any questions at this point on anything that we've been talking about? If so, go ahead and put those into the chat down below. Thank you, Clay. Go ahead. I'm just going to keep talking, but please go ahead and keep typing those answers, the questions there. Right now, with Breakout EDU, you can, you do have the option of buying a box. You have the option of trying to kind of find all of those different clues and all of those different locks and kind of building a box yourself. But I also wanted to give you some things that are free or very inexpensive that still do similar things to the Breakout EDU platform. So that's what we're going to be doing here in just a second. Once we've dealt with Clay's question here, Clay says, do you ever use the Breakout EDU kit for non-supervised programs in the library, just as a kind of self-guided program? Clay, that is something that at this point we have not done, but that is something you could definitely do. If you once again would kind of be missing out on that facilitation piece. But a lot of the time, if with given enough time, students and participants would be able to solve those problems themselves if they were willing to keep working on it. So I think using it as a stealth program or a self-directed program could definitely work. Thank you for that question. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to shoot those into the chat down below. Right now, I'm going to talk about some other tools that you can use that do some of the same things as Breakout EDU, but they're going to be free, which is kind of nice. One that I found was called Escape Team. This is something that I do not have experience with myself, but it seemed like something that would be right up the Breakout EDU alley. The basic idea is you would have a timer and a checklist on a mobile device, and then you would print out all of the clues and all the information that you need from their website. The nice thing is that the curriculum for them is free to download and print off. So you would have your digital aspect of the locks that you can click, as well as the timer that's going, but all the rest of it is actually going to be that physical interaction with paper and clues on the table. So Escape Team is going to be one of those games that you could try if you're looking for an alternative to Breakout EDU. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, but it is a fantastic collaboration, communication, and problem-solving game. This is what the Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes program looks like. It's actually a computer game. You can also get it for virtual reality, which is really cool. The basic idea is one person is sitting in front of a computer looking at this bomb. And then you have in another room or in a place that cannot see the computer, you have your code breakers. Your code breakers are looking at a manual that tells you in critical thinking steps how to disarm these different clues. So based on what kind of wires do you have there? What kind of numbers do you have? What kind of button is it? It'll actually tell you how to disarm the bomb. So you're having the decoders trying to work with a person that's actually trying to unhinge the bomb. And it can be a very pressure-filled environment, but you're working on your communication skills, your problem solving, and it is just a really great time. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, I highly suggest it. You do have, I believe, the game itself is around $15 for the download onto your computer, but then all of the supplemental material, the manual and such, is free. So another game that is a lot of fun. We've done this with some middle and high school students, and they had a great time with it. This is another one that I've heard of. Once again, haven't had a chance to try it myself. It's called Space Team. The basic idea is multiple people would be attaching their mobile devices to each other on the Space Team platform. And then you are once again trying to communicate with your other teammates. Oh, can someone twist this knob for me? Or can someone turn this upside down? And then the game tells you to shake your mobile device. So you're communicating with each other, but it's once again that pressure-filled environment that's going to kind of be that gamification, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So Space Team is another one to definitely look into. I'm not sure if anyone has heard of Heads Up, but this is kind of a game similar to Taboo or Catchphrase, but it's for a mobile device. You put your mobile device up on your head, and a word comes up. Everyone around you is trying to explain the word to you without saying the word itself. And then once the person holding the device up to their head says the word, you pass it on to the next person. So a great party game, kind of a great icebreaker, but also works on that communication, on that collaboration piece. Another one that I heard about while I was researching Breakout EDU is called Reverse Charades, which is just what it sounds like. Instead of one person acting out a card and everyone else guessing, one person is guessing and everyone else is acting out. So you would have a group of people that's trying to act out a Roman legion while one person is trying to guess Roman legion as the clue. So these are just a couple ideas of scenarios that would be alternatives to Breakout EDU. One more that I wanted to mention to you, at my library, we call it Telephotoictionary. There's a lot of other names for it. The basic idea is everyone has a stack of paper in front of them. On the top sheet of paper, everyone in a circle writes a sentence. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. They then take their entire stack of paper and pass it to the person on their right. The person on the right looks at that sentence, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, takes that top piece of paper, puts it in the bottom of the stack, and then draws a picture based on the first person's sentence. So now the person is trying to draw a quick brown fox jumping over the lazy dog. Then you pass to the right again. So now this third person, they're looking at a picture of a quick brown fox jumping over the lazy dog, but they do not get to see the original sentence. So that's where it's kind of that game of telephone, but you also have that game of Pictionary because you're having to draw. We find this once again to be a fantastic way to work on communication skills. There's so many things about how does a group work together and group dynamics that you can also talk about after you've played Telephoto Pictionary. As we mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be sending out an archive, but also a clickable list of all of those resources that we just talked about. So in that resource, we're going to have those 3 Breakout EDU scenarios, some of the best practices that we've come up with, but also some of those alternatives to Breakout EDU that you might want to try in your library. Looks like Tammy is asking a question right now, and that's actually the next thing that we want to do is what questions do you have? Does anyone have any experience with Breakout EDU that they would like to share? Does anyone have questions about the facilitation or what that looks like or any other resources that you wanted to mention? Well, everybody, it looks like we don't have any questions coming in. Clay, thank you for throwing up a question there. If anyone else has any additional questions, please type them in the list below. Otherwise, if you're sitting there right now, don't quite have a question, or you're just watching this archive later, wanted to make sure that I shared my email address, nickm@communitylibrary.net. Feel free to shoot me an email. I would be happy to talk with you about any of the things that we have talked about today. It looks like Clay and Naomi have a couple of questions right now. Naomi asks, what differences do you see between library use and school use? Naomi, thank you for that question. For school use, I think that would be a time when the Breakout EDU platform would be beneficial to actually purchase the Breakout, the platform itself. Because then if you're in your math class and you want to facilitate a Breakout EDU room, you would be able to look at other Breakout EDU scenarios that other math teachers have put together. So you would have that content already created for you instead of having to create a math game for those Breakout EDU locks. So I think if you're using it in that school scenario, it would be best to actually have that curriculum from Breakout EDU available to you. And that would once again be $150 for the Breakout EDU kit, and then $60 for platform access after that every year, which is reasonably inexpensive for all of those different scenarios and pieces you'd be able to use. For library use, most of the time we've used it more as a collaboration, team building kind of an activity. And so getting by with some of those pre-packaged free scenarios works just as well. So the short version ultimately is you can do in the school, you'd probably be basing it more on the content itself and adjusting the Breakout EDU room specifically for the subject matter that you were dealing with in school. Clay also asked a question. We've used the Breakout EDU kit a couple of times, and our problem has been getting the kids into the problem-solving mindset. Any tips for that? Clay, thank you for that question. And at this point, most of the time, having other mentors in the room besides the facilitator or having older students in the room seems to be the best way to get those kids into that problem-solving mindset. So when a kid gets stuck, even if it's a math problem, even a very simple math problem, if they think they're not able to do it, they just shut down and stop working toward that goal. And so what we have found is having those mentors or having those older students that are able to step in and help with that process seems to get them unstuck better, if that makes sense. Another thing to do would be building in the scenario some really, really low-hanging fruit. With the attack of the locks, I mentioned that some of those initial locks are really easy to get at. One of them, for instance, is just Roman numerals. So if one of the students in the room knows Roman numerals or one of the students in the group, you're able to very quickly get the satisfaction of, ooh, this is just Roman numerals. I bet that's the combination for the lock. And a lock unlocks and you're like, ooh, we can do this. Let's make this happen. So having those initial easier locks and then kind of scaffolding to some of the more difficult locks might also help, but also just having more mentors in the room might also help. If that's not possible, just being very aware with those students, asking them, hey, what's your process? Oh, it looks like you might be stuck. What questions do you have? Or what's something that I would be able to do to help you along? Looks like Tammy and Clay are typing at the moment. And everybody, thank you so much once again for coming to the webinar. If there's any other questions that you think of, feel free to shoot me an email, or if there's other topics about youth services programs or ways of facilitating technology in the classroom, please let me know. I would love to chat with you about those things as well. Tammy says, I think scaffolding is a good idea. For example, I was frustrated with the hieroglyphic lock, but I felt excited when I moved on to the color lock and was successful. Yeah, Tammy, that's definitely something that I noticed as well. The first time that you do it, you go, wait a minute, it's not working. But moving from that frustrating point, being able to move over to something else that you have success in, most of the time encourages you to go back to that lock that is frustrating, which is nice. Clay says, thanks. It was a huge challenge on our first time because we had a group of K through second grade students. I would definitely recommend caution with a group that young, even if the scenario lists them as a target age group. Clay, thank you for that piece of information as well. Most of the time when we've done Breakout EDU, we have done it for elementary school, older elementary school students through high school students. Some of the time we have done it in an after-school setting where you have kindergarten up through like 5th grade or 6th grade in the room. And in that situation, pairing those older students with the younger students really helped us. But if you only had young students in the room, this kind of long-term multi-step thinking is something that is going to be very difficult for that young of students. So yeah, Clay, thank you for that piece of feedback there as well. Everyone, we are getting close to 12:30 up here in northern Idaho, just about an hour after we've started. If there are no other questions, I think we're going to go ahead and call it quits. We are going to be sending out that resource list to all of you. Thanks again for joining us today. And if you're watching this later on with an archive, thank you for watching. Hope you got something useful out of it. Let me know if you have any other questions. Thank you so much.